Now we are beginning the last session of a very full day of program. I guess many of you probably sitting here for more than 8 hours today. But we are going to have one very exciting speech coming up by Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. And I want to make a quick introduction about Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. Many of you know his work in China. He was previous Google CEO of China, and before that, he was executive at Microsoft. And he built the Microsoft Research Asia, one of the best research institute in China. And before that, even Microsoft career, he was an AI researcher. He invented the speech recognition software, one of the best speech recognition product. He received his PhD from CMU and been doing many years of research. And now he's CEO of Sinovation, where it invests in AI technology companies. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Kai-Fu Lee.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. On the screen, you see my new book, and I'm going to be speaking the most interesting parts from the book today. And after the session, the signed book will be available outside. So rather than me telling you about AI, many of you don't know me, let me have a really famous person tell you about AI, okay? Here it goes.
It's a great thing to build a better world with artificial intelligence.
Wait.
人工智能正在改变世界。
So that's a demonstration from iFlyTech, a company from China, that demonstrates the power of deep learning. I mean, this is a group that's heard a lot about deep learning, so I don't need to go into any technical details. I hope in the talk today, I will show you today that machine learning and AI is progressing faster, better, and readier to become a platform in the whole world. And underlying it are a set of technologies with the biggest breakthrough known as deep learning. You've heard a lot about technical details from people like Ilya and others in the morning, but deep learning, if I were to summarize it in terms of how it can be used, is in a single domain when you can collect a huge amount of training data, and with some tuning by AI scientists, you will get superhuman performance in prediction, classification, or classification or decision making. So in this particular case, it's actually running deep learning backwards. It's doing synthesis, but there are many other things it can do. If you feed it lots of game of Go, it then can play Go. If you feed it lots of loan data from borrowing money, it can make loans. If you feed it lots of click-through data by Amazon, it can decide what ad you're most likely to click on, and so on and so forth. So that is the power, is that essentially it's a tunable black box in one single domain that can do superhuman performance. So with that, at Sinovation Ventures, we've been investing in AI for the last 5 years. And the last 2.5 years is when AI has become the talk of every place, and conferences like this were born. The way we at Sinovation look at AI is one set of technologies, right, wrapped around deep learning, GAN, reinforcement learning, other technologies from machine learning, but applied to 4 waves that are overlapping, but increasingly more powerful, that will disrupt many industries in our everyday lives. This first wave is obviously the internet AI, because, as I said, huge amount of data in one domain. So who has that? Of course, the internet companies. Google's newsfeed, Facebook's newsfeed, Google's ads, Amazon's product correlation are exactly the same types of applications you need to create the greatest value. And today, the most powerful AI companies are also internet companies, because imagine you have a little knob that can help you 2 more minutes per user 2 more revenue per user, 2 more profit per user. So sometimes it's actually very hard to resist the temptation to use those knobs to maximize your profit, sometimes at the expense of users. But anyway, the internet companies are the most powerful. But we have entered the second phase where business AI is now becoming the mainstream. Actually, most startups today in AI are doing business AI. And what that means is if you're a bank, insurance company, a hospital, a retail shop, you've already got a ton of data and you're collecting more data. And you're not an internet company, but in the bank, you would have every customer's every transaction. And that too can be used as training data to obtain better asset allocation for bank customers, for better fraud detection for credit cards, for determining if you're making a loan, and so on and so forth. To give you one example in this domain, we have a company that is doing loan approval, and it has amazingly low single-digit default rate. And the money is loaned to absolute strangers. Think about it. How many of you would take $500,000 from your bank account, if you have that, and go out on the streets of Santa Clara and find 1,000 people who approach you who want to borrow $500 each and just give it out? What do you think the default rate will be? It's going to be very high, isn't it? But this company that we funded has a default rate down in the single digit. And why is that? It's because it collects data and features not only from typical loan determination, that is your name, address, work, salary, job, etc., but also collects data from your phone. Data, before you all worry about privacy, this is data that you allow other applications to take from your phone. Things like list of applications, which have a high degree of correlation with whether you repay the loan or not. Think about if you have a gambling app or lots of games, or if you have really serious apps like Quora or Zhihu, right? Those would place you at a more likely to repay kind. And think about the type of phone you have. If you have the fancy iPhone XR versus you got some really 10-year-old phone, again, it differentiates whether you're likely to repay or not. And even things like the day of the month is important because it could be before payday or after payday. How does it know your payday? Well, you told it your worker, you told it your city, you told it your address. It can infer that. So borrowing money before payday is reasonable, borrowing after is not. And even extreme things like battery level is correlated with whether you repay or not. Think about that, right? And someone with OCD and charges the phone all the time, that's similar to someone who might repay a loan. Someone who keeps letting the battery run out, maybe not so good. Now, is that a strong feature? No, that's a very, very weak feature. But there are 3,000 features fused together in deep learning. So I think this gives you an example in business AI, how AI will go way beyond traditional means. But it will start with what banks have, and then build all these knowledge from the phone, and build a loan officer that no human can possibly match. So hopefully that example is useful. Then we go into wave 3, perception AI. We all know about Amazon Echo with speech input and recognition that will be in cars, hands busy, eyes busy situations. We also know about face recognition, computer vision. China is actually the strongest in both areas. China's speech recognition system company, iFlyTech, is the highest value company, and China has several unicorns in computer vision. But to tell you another anecdote, recently, there's a famous Chinese singer, Jackie Cheng, Zhang Xueyou. He gave a series of concerts in China, and every city, about 5 to 10 criminals were arrested as a side benefit of the concert. Why is that? Because the concert halls are now built in with cameras for the safety of the people attending concert. Also connected to face recognition, also connected to the most wanted list of faces. So perhaps 25 or 30 faces triggered, and then policemen checked IDs, and some are false alarms, and the other 9 were arrested per city. So this is the power of face recognition. This is real-time, real video, 60 frames a second. This is not the system that you use when you enter a country. To take a photo and wait 3 seconds. That's like 3 generations ago. So this type of real-time recognition, enabling things like autonomous stores like Amazon Go, and in the future, autonomous basically everything. Autonomous elderly home, where we can watch maybe an elderly person fell down or about to roll off the bed. These things can all be triggered based on a set of powerful camera, sensors, microphones. And the IoT session you just heard shows you in the future sensors will be cheaper and cheaper. In countries where cameras are sensitive, there will be equivalent sensors deployed. In countries which can accept cameras being deployed, they will be in clinics, schools, stores, restaurants, everywhere. Finally, the fourth wave is autonomous AI. That's when the system can autonomously decide where and how to move and manipulate. And that is the beginning of robotics. Robotics commercially, robotics industrial, and of course, autonomous vehicles. So in autonomous AI, this would include things like doing automatic inspection using computer vision in manufacturing. It would include things like building commercial robots, like automatic dishwashers, fruit pickers, automatic agriculture in terms of determining how much each vegetable needs water and fertilizer, and doing that in a customized way to maximize crop output. It would include, of course, autonomous vehicle, which I know we have sessions on that. An autonomous vehicle will really completely change the way we transport ourselves, as well as logistics and delivery. So each of these waves will be 5 to 10 points in the global GDP, and will result in displacement of perhaps 5 to 8% of workforce. So that there are positive implications and challenges. In order for AI to work, as I mentioned, it has to be massive amount of data with automatic tagging, and in a single domain. And you need a lot of computation power and a lot of AI experts. One moment on tagging, because a lot of people think it's all human tagging. Definitely not. The loan example I gave you was trained on actually people who borrowed money and returned or didn't or defaulted. So based on the people's behavior, whether they defaulted on the loan or not, the system is trained. Based on Amazon, whether you bought or not, the system is trained. Based on when you use Meitu, anybody use Meitu? Or Beauty Plus? Oh, wow, a man who admits he uses Beauty Plus. Good for you. First time ever. So you're tagging it every time you use it, because when you save, it says you did a good job. When you delete, it says you did a poor job. So Meitu also uses the feedback. So all these systems become self-learning systems, but based on user action tagging, not necessarily human tagging, which may be needed in the beginning. So let's talk a moment about US and China. So this is the US. You probably all think US naturally leads the world. Of course, these are the inventors of AI. These are the inventors of deep science, deep learning, all Americans or Canadians. And if you look further at the top 1,000 researchers, still dominated by the US, about 68%. And China has a much smaller number, same with patents. So you're probably likely to reach the conclusion US is way ahead of China. Just looking at the graph on the left, US has 11 times more AI super experts than China. So China should have no chance, right? Wrong, because of 3 reasons. Number one, because when you think about AI, you have to think about the context of all the breakthroughs that have happened. And this is, in my perception, this y-axis is Kai-Fu Lee's estimation, okay? It doesn't mean anything, but it roughly means the type of thing that was invented and how much impact it has on the industry. Okay, this is not based on some research paper or something, but if you think about it, we've had 62 years of history and lots of inventions, many of which are very important, some of which I participated in, but I rate them as small inventions. There's only been one breakthrough, which is deep learning. And that breakthrough is now basically open domain, open source. So Chinese researchers, Japanese researchers, UK researchers, American researchers, they're standing at exactly the same level. Well, how about another breakthrough? It's possible, but in 62 years, only one breakthrough, and that was 8 years ago. So why do you think there's going to be another 5 breakthroughs coming? So probably not extremely likely. So we are now in the phase of monetizing on that big surge. That surge is electricity. So the whole world is building on that surge. Of course, I simplify when I say deep learning. I mean everything you build around deep learning and simpler technologies when you don't have enough data. You all know what I mean. But I think there's only been one big breakthrough, and the Chinese knows it as well as the Americans. So there is no research advantage unless there's another breakthrough. The second point is that because the whole world has been optimizing deep learning and other machine learning technologies, we have shifted to widespread adoption. So, electricity was a great invention, the whole world, and then the whole world, there was early competition between Tesla and Edison on the invention of electricity. Once people picked Edison, and then it moved on to adoption. There was no electricity 2.0. Now, there could be another great AGI in the future. There could be lots of breakthroughs that you've heard about in the conference. But from a venture capital standpoint, we don't care because we have a giant platform with lots of people ready to jump in. We're now in the era of adoption, of application, of implementation, of monetization. AI will create $17 trillion of value based on what is already known. So what else can you discover? Great. The more you discover, the better. But even if you discover nothing based on deep learning and its natural extensions, there's a huge opportunity going forward. And of course, the third is that AI is becoming a huge platform and easier and easier for people to enter the era of AI. Back 5 years ago, there were probably only 1,000 people who were brilliant and could start AI companies. But now there are just so many. And to give you an example, I think the last one, if you're not working on a super hard problem like autonomous driving, I would argue you can have young AI engineers do the number 5, not the super experts. Show you an example. At Sinovation Ventures, we trained 300 students. And at the end of 5 weeks, they wrote an autonomous driving algorithm that is running as you see. It's a toy, it's not a real car, it's a toy car, but it's running in real roads with bicycles, people, and skateboards. And this is done by 10 students with 0 experience in AI. So it shows you the level, at the level of AI platform technologies like TensorFlow. Of course, they had a great coach who is an expert in autonomous vehicle who led the team. But the team built from 0 code to what you saw in this demo. So it is getting easier and easier. So with these 3 orange-colored changes that visualize AI in a different way than maybe some of the other speakers today, let me talk about China's advantage going forward. First, there are tons of Chinese engineers jumping in. If you don't look at the top 1,000, but look at the top 100,000 researchers, China is actually about 42% of the world's population, of the world's researchers. On the upper right, you see the engineers. On the lower right, you see people listening to me giving this talk in China. And second reason, China is innovative. Chinese products are innovative because China has actually perfected the art of lean startup, an idea written up in Silicon Valley, but China is so much better at it. You have to read my book for more details, but in short, what this says is China only 15 years ago was copied from US. Then China was inspired by the US, but built its own products, in many cases better than American products. Many of you here probably use WeChat and WhatsApp, and I think you would all agree WeChat is better than WhatsApp. And many of you use Weibo and Twitter. You'll probably agree Weibo is better than Twitter. Maybe not in the diversity of content, but certainly in the ease of use and the product design. And then you go on to the orange part where the Chinese companies are truly innovating. For those of you who are Chinese, you recognize them. For those of you who are not, you're saying, what are all these things? These are brand new, from the ground, Chinese innovative products with a total value, just the column orange is about $300 billion, are brand new Chinese innovations. So Chinese companies are innovative now, no longer copycats. That's an important thing for those of you who haven't heard this before. And now it's going not copy to China, but copy from China. So what this has led to is I had this picture drawn by an artist just for you. First time ever shown is that we are in a parallel universe. On the left are you Americans enjoying wonderful things, flying cars and drones and Amazon delivery, but some backward things like Visa and MasterCard. On the right, you see China with an amazing, food delivery, shared bicycles, and no cash and no credit cards, and Pinduoduo, a $25 billion company doing something none of you know what it does. So, two parallel universes that shows you both are innovative, both have their ecosystems. Don't believe what the media says, that the Chinese success is based on IP theft and protectionism. I'm not denying that there are past offenses in those categories, but today China has a completely parallel, equally valued entrepreneurial ecosystem. And the way it got there was through a bunch of very hardworking, incredibly hardworking Chinese entrepreneurs who play in a winner-take-all environment, which hones them and forces them to build models, business models, that cannot be copied. Because when you had so many copycats 10 years ago, everyone is a copycat. How can you possibly win? Is by building something that's uncopyable. And that, I think, should be studied in all business schools as a parallel way to innovate, parallel to Silicon Valley. And then on the right, you see 996. 996 is considered very good work-life balance in China. That's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Not just for entrepreneurial companies. The picture you see here was an old picture, but nevertheless a picture of the taxi queue outside Tencent headquarters at 2 a.m. in the morning. Okay, I'm not here to advocate working hard. I'm just describing these are the important ingredients of China's success. And China has more AI capital. Last year, more money was invested in China, 48% compared to 38% in venture capital invested in AI. And just Sinovation Ventures, my company alone, if I could brag a little bit, we have 5 AI unicorns. Total valuation, $21 billion US. And there are a total 15 AI unicorns in China. I don't know how many there are in the US, but probably not a larger number. And then a really important reason for China is that massive data is critical for AI success. On the right, you see a picture. It doesn't matter what field it is, speech recognition, image recognition, face recognition. The more data, the better the performance, because deep learning has an incredible hunger for data. When you throw more data at it, you can always add layers and more complex network and get better results. And more data is important. So in the age of AI, data is the new oil, so China is the new Saudi Arabia. And this picture shows you China has more users on the upper left side. And then on the other 3 quadrants, it shows you China has more usage. More usage in food delivery by 10 times, more in bicycle sharing by 300 times, and most importantly, 50 times in mobile payment. I was talking to people trying to sell my books outside. Selling my books in the US, giving speeches, is the most difficult part because everybody still has to swipe those credit cards. I sign 20 times faster than they swipe. In China, it would just be one scan, wouldn't it? And this is something China is way ahead. And this picture shows you that China mobile payment last year was larger than China's GDP. Everyone is scanning. This is a picture of a farmer's market. A month ago, my wife went to Tianqiao in Beijing. She saw a beggar holding up a sign. I am hungry, scan me. Okay? This is not something I would ever joke about. This is serious. Because had he put out the pan, he would get no money because nobody has cash. And going digital in mobile is incredibly important. China has 600 million people who can pay each other with no commission and basically no minimum charge. So anyone can send any amount of money with almost no commission. Imagine when that is true, it will turn an economy from a savings economy to a spending economy. It will create opportunities for anybody to buy. How does Pinduoduo become a $25 billion company? Without mobile payment, there's no way, because its customers many of them are in the village. If the village people don't have a way to pay electronically, they're not going to buy that 10 pounds of garlic for $2. That is what Pinduoduo does, right? So mobile payment is incredibly critical for entrepreneurship, and of course it's incredible rocket fuel for AI, because what data is more valuable than actual payment? It is certain you bought the thing. It's not like a click on a website or a glance in a face recognition. And lastly, the Chinese government, of course, is very supportive of AI. It has a techno-utilitarian policy, which means we'll try something out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then regulate it. It's willing to try things early, unlike Europe, which wants to regulate everything before even it's understood. And also, from the state council level, it has set the tone that AI is a national priority. And with that tone, each city can decide what to do. The city of Nanjing decided, well, we have good schools. We're going to be building an AI park of 2 million square feet size. Okay? And then in the city of Suzhou, they said, we'll build a 2-layer downtown that has autonomous vehicles and regular vehicles. And then China is building a Xiong'an, which is the city the size of Chicago, that has a 2-layer downtown, one for cars and one for, at the bottom, and one for pedestrians and pets and bicycles, fully green on the top. So that kind of infrastructure spend will allow China to launch autonomous vehicles early without sacrificing safety. So even though US is ahead of China in autonomous vehicle, if infrastructure build-out can compensate for the inadequacy of technology, China may actually launch it first. And by launching it first, China will get more data. And of course, more data comes performance. So that becomes a very positive, virtuous cycle. So if we're going to compare, so who's ahead? The miracle has already happened in AI implementation. We've seen the last 5 years, China go from nowhere to basically almost caught up with the US. And if we project another 5 years, in AI implementation, China should be ahead of the US by a little bit. That is my projection. Of course, if new research, new technology, new breakthroughs come, that may completely change the game. So with these, China and US as dual engine, 7 giants training AI experts, funds, especially like SoftBank, $100 billion AI fund, and platforms making AI easier, AI will create a tremendous amount of value. By PwC, about $16 trillion by the year 2030, net increase in GDP for globally. And it will also bring a lot of challenges in privacy, security, bias are the ones you hear about the most in the US. But I want to talk about something called job displacement. If you imagine a single domain, huge amount of data, trained to be better than human, well, how many people work in a single domain that is routine and can be trained on quantitative data? If you think about it, that is none of you in the room, but of all the jobs in the world, probably a large percentage. 30%, 50%, all plausible numbers. So what's going to happen then is AI will display jobs more than it creates in the short term. In the long term, I firmly believe AI will create many, many more jobs. But in the short term, we see that a lot of repetitive jobs are going to be gone. Safe are some of us who are working on either complex jobs that require multi-domain, see, not a single domain, or creative thinking. So this displacement is already happening, actually for white collar before blue collar, because white collar jobs are just software. And you see on the top, on the upper left, Citi has announced it will reduce 10,000 of its 20,000 back office operational jobs. So back office jobs are going to be the first ones to go. And on the bottom, you see the trading floor already empty. These are the beginnings of displacement on the white-collar side. On the blue-collar, it's going to be a little tougher, but many jobs are not that tough either. You see two investments here in the middle. In the F5 Future Store example you see is a robotic fast food that we fund. If you're ever in Guangzhou, you can go try it. A bowl of beef noodles for about $2. So would you have that or McDonald's? Well, if you rather have that, if that takes 50% of Chinese share, then McDonald's and KFC will have to lay off half of their workforce. That's a form of job displacement caused by industry disruption. Of course, KFC and McDonald's can directly use autonomous cooking and serving. In that case, it will be a direct replacement. Either way, it's a displacement. On the right, you see a pastry shop, which we fund in China, that automatically checks out your pastry. So you take a tray, and then you just let the computer vision scan from a fisheye camera. In 0.1 second, you're checked out. Money's charged against your WeChat account based on face recognition. You can leave. The store has no people. So this is happening now. And in some sense, China may be ahead in the actual implementation, even though Amazon Go was probably the first to demonstrate the concept. So what do? Are we going to let all the displaced people become CEOs and scientists? Of course not. If we think about what AI cannot do, well, one is it cannot create and cannot do multi-domain strategic thinking, and the other is that it has no empathy, has no compassion, has no love. There are many jobs that require human-to-human interaction, perhaps called service jobs, that only people can do, that AI cannot do. Even if AI faked it, people don't want it. These are jobs like nannies, nurses, doctors, teachers, concierge, tour guides, and so on. So if we actually properly do this chart, we should have two dimensions. One on creativity, going from the left least creative to the right most creative. And the other dimension is on the y-axis, going from the bottom, no compassion needed, to the top, high compassion needed. And then when we place these jobs, they should go into all four quadrants. So you can see on the upper left, there are many jobs that can be had. Taking elderly care as an example, there are more and more older people. We're all living longer. So those jobs are rapidly expanding. There are 1 million such jobs available just in the US, but currently people don't apply for them because of the pay and the social status. So these are some of the things that have to change. So I think there are enough jobs on the upper left for the bottom left to transition into. We just have to work hard to make the upper left more attractive and pay better. So to summarize, what would the future of coexistence of human and AI look like? It's actually in 4 quadrants. On the lower left, it will be completely displaced by AI. On the lower right, these will be tools to help humans be more creative. On the upper left, these will be AI analytical tools like medical diagnosis, with human doctor wrapping warmth and human connectivity around it. And finally, on the upper right, humans will remain the dominant using AI as a tool. So AI is going to move careers forward, become great tools, but we also have to accept it will displace some jobs. So the talk has been about the next 20 years, lots of opportunities, lots of challenges. If we go a little bit further to 50 years out and look back, we will actually recognize that all these challenges are a good thing for us because we'll realize 2 things. First, that AI will be very thankful for it because it liberates us from routine work and it pushes us into thinking what it means to be human and lets us have a lot of free time to do things we love and we're good at. And secondly, AI is just a tool. It is not this fantasy. And humans are the only ones with free will, and we're the ones who are going to write the end of the story of our book, Between Us and AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. We have time for a few questions.
Okay.
Okay, so we are going to open up the floor, and our volunteer will give you the mic. Just put up your hand.
你好.
I'm Miran. I live in Shanghai. I have 2 questions. First of all, will you sign The book for me?
I will sign all books after the Q&A. I'll
Thank
sign.
you.
Yeah.
And second question. So I've started a company called Cosmos AI, and China is our biggest market. And and we have good traction. We work with Tencent, and my biggest nightmare is that I will end up as Uber or Google. So my question is, what is your advice for a guilo like me, white guy in China?
Right.
And second, do you think it's a good idea to take investment from Tencent at the early stage, or it's a suicide thinking about Alibaba?
Well, okay, so for a foreigner to start a company in China, you absolutely need a Chinese partner and a Chinese team, or you need a strong partner who helps you with the go-to-market. I think Tencent and Alibaba are trustworthy professional companies, so partnering them is actually very good for you. Just, of course, partnering with one of them would exclude any possibility of working with the other, but either of them is so large that it's not a problem. I think Tencent is a very professional company. If you look at all of their investments, such as Snapchat, they have been nothing but a helpful force. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I would, if you want to, and also I think if your technology has unique value, they might be a very good acquisition acquirer as well. But I think a purely American company trying to go it alone, crossing the border with a few Chinese employees, that is not a formula that's likely to succeed. And actually, my book goes into much more details about why that is, but you have it, so you'll see it.
Next question.
Hi.
It was very interesting talk, and it made me think two things. One, regarding the mobile payment, is China exporting this technology, and how it has helped China in tax collection.
Tax collection.
Yeah.
Greatly.
And, yeah. And the second question is regarding people losing their job. So if people don't have job, who is going to buy the products, and how they're going to pay, have a free life, but where the money will come from?
Okay, good questions, very good. China, I think Alipay, or a part of Ant Financial, they would love to take this technology worldwide. As you can see in my parallel universe, as well as in my book, I'm also generally not positive about Chinese companies being successful in the US. But Ant Financial may be one exception, because their payment solution truly is significantly better. And I think it's not just a technology issue, it's having the guts to fight the credit cards. You know, you talk to companies like Apple Pay and PayPal and Venmo, they still don't have the guts to stand up to MasterCard and Visa and say, we don't link to you. We only work when we link to your bank account, and we'll give you cash if you do that. This is how WeChat Pay and Alipay succeeded. They basically thumbed their noses at the credit cards. You can't beat credit cards while being their partner, because they're going to be parasites and you can't get out of it. So that is a different mentality. Chinese entrepreneurs have the winner-take-all mentality, win everything or give up kind of mentality, as opposed to let's co-opetition. See, that is a key difference, again, between the Chinese ecosystem. And the second question, tax. Yes, Chinese government will collect more taxes because they will, over time, get the records of the transactions and be able to directly tax what they think needs to be taxed. I don't think it's happened yet, but it's clearly inevitable. And as with any government, once this became the dominant payment scheme, at least unless there's a different way. Like in the US, there's a very clear state tax and income tax. But if you want to charge tax over, let's say, interstate or within state e-commerce transactions, having a common payment method is a great way for a government to tax. It hasn't yet happened, but it's inevitable. The other question about the jobs, well, I'm not forecasting people will necessarily lose jobs. I think there are many scenarios. I think if we really help retrain the people, let's say the truckers who lose the jobs due to autonomous trucks, if they're willing to be elderly caretakers, then they will still have the job. I'm optimistic that there are enough humanistic jobs to allow there to be a low unemployment level, but we have to work on it. And over time, AI will create jobs, and there will be things like we'll work 4-day weeks. So I think over time, give us 30, 40, 50 years, we will figure out all sorts of solutions so people still have jobs and money, or at least have money. And then, I mean, in the extreme case where really people do lose jobs, there are people who advocate this thing called universal basic income, which means we'll give people money when they don't have jobs. I'm personally not crazy about the idea, but some degree of income distribution may very well be needed. So people will have money. And also, another thing is, keep in mind, even if, let's say, in the world, I don't think this will happen. Let's say there's a 20% unemployment, or 30%. This is about the worst it could possibly get. I don't think it'll get that bad, but let's say it happens. Well, first, there's some social welfare to take care they don't go hungry or homeless, and then AI will generate so much money. There are going to be so many new riches, right? New people. Income disparity actually will be a problem. So there will be people who will want, to get a $100,000 cruise for a week, because they've made $50 billion. So spending at the luxury level will go crazy. I mean, the overall GDP will dramatically increase, even though some percentage may have less money. So I don't worry about consumption. I worry about making sure that there is not 30% unemployment by making sure there's training program so that people can move on to the next job.
All right, because of time concern, we have one last question, and we'll let Dr. Kefli to sign the book.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Lee. My name is Wei. I'm an ex-Googler also, and I'm working on my own startup for the mobile search engine in the AI era. So I'm interested to know your opinion on the relationship between AI and search, and how AI can help people to gain information and knowledge more efficiently.
Well, first, I think you have to call it something other than search. Because when you go to a VC and say, I'm working on AI search, they'll just close the door. Because search is considered something that's last century, right? I'm sure what you mean is you're creating some kind of speech dialogue system, that delegation interface, tell me what you want done and I will do the steps to do it for you. Is that closer to what you're doing? Okay, so let's describe your company that way. Now, don't call it a search. Calling it a search, I mean, not every VC is like me who can read your mind, but I do think there is a role for a delegation interface. I think speech is the natural way in which we communicate with each other, and we've kind of, over time, been forced to convert the outcome we want to accomplish into the steps we have to do, right? If I want to accomplish, give my wife an anniversary present, I should say just that, and it shall be done. But instead, I go to Amazon and I go to look for deals, and then I'll search. I'd go to Taobao, look for some fake goods or something. No, sorry, kidding, just kidding. That would be Pinduoduo, not Taobao. My mistake. Sorry to any Alibaba employees here. No, seriously, I would go to the steps and find something and have it emailed to my secret office location, and then tell my admin to remind me and all that stuff. But if in the future we're going to really have AI, the AI should be like a human assistant. And it should be able to take our input and just get it done and take the steps. So I think if you can get to that point, I think that would be a great direction. However, there are two big challenges for you to think about if that's the direction you're going. The first challenge is, as I said, AI is really good for one domain. So how many domains is delegation interface? I don't know, 1,000, 2,000? How do you glue it together? That it can buy a present for my wife's anniversary, but cannot buy a dinner for my team at work. So how much does it really have to understand? When you work on delegation interfaces, you'll find 1 task, 3 tasks, 5 tasks, people can understand. That is users. Infinite tasks, people can understand. 1,000 tasks is really hard, because what 1,000 can you do and what others can you not do? So how do you cross the multi-domain problem so that to the user it's truly natural, I can say whatever I want, but I don't get, I don't understand that, like Siri and Alexa often tells us That's the disappointing part. So how do you overcome that? Or can you find natural application domains that are restricted in smaller areas that the users know not to go beyond? So that's the first suggestion, how to deal with multi-domain. The second question is what you said, mobile. Well, we are already very used to using basically multi-touch interface on mobile. So speech or language, for that matter, will always be a fifth wheel. So building speech or natural language interfaces for the phone is going to be really hard, right? How many of us really talk to our phones? Very few, except for Chinese or English entry. So because each device is either AI first, or it's keyboard mouse first, or it's multi-touch first. So why has speech never taken off on the PC? Because all the apps are written with keyboard and mouse in mind. Why hasn't speech taken off on the phone? Because all the apps are written with multi-touch in mind. Speech is a fifth wheel. So how do you overcome that problem, right? Either you must build, today probably Tencent's the only company capable of building that speech interface, because WeChat is like a giant app. You can live in WeChat. So Tencent can just declare speech interface is the future, just don't leave WeChat. And many people will actually oblige. But no other company is that powerful. And then when you build something, let's say in the US, you've got to go talk to Yelp and Amazon and all kinds of companies. Well, they're not going to do your speech interface. So I think that's going to be another big challenge. So I think it's an area that's incredibly promising, and it's got these two big challenges I hope you figure out how to overcome.
Let's thank Dr. Lee, and he will be outside for book
will.
signing. So that concludes our day session today. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you.